Welcome to Awareness Film Festival 2017. This is the Different Abilities panel telling our stories of health. And we've got our filmmakers here. We've got Krell Gerald.
Or Gerald Krell.
Or Gerald Krell. Oh, sorry, I had that backwards.
That's all right.
These filmmakers' names.
Swing both ways.
Awesome. And the title of your film is Your Health, Sacred Matter.
That's right.
So could you just introduce yourself to our Facebook crowd and give us a little
I'm Gerald
2 minutes?
Krell. And in my documentaries, Your Health is Sacred Matter. And I'm producing filmmaking partners. Unfortunately, one passed away, my dear partner Maya Odes, who was with us. And my son, who would rather take care of his firstborn child than be at this festival. I don't know where his priorities are. But in any case, and was born on my birthday. So that's exciting.
That's exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
And the documentary is underwritten by the John Templeton Foundation. And just took us about 15 years to get the grant.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's persistence.
Long
Pays
day's
off.
journey tonight, but it was worth it. We did get a very nice grant from the John Templeton Foundation. But we made other documentaries while we were waiting for that grant. Isn't that? We were waiting for Godot. We didn't wait for 15 years before it happened. We were made 3 other interfaith documentaries, and all our documentaries are on public television. Will be on public. This one will be on public television stations nationwide. And we did 3 others on interfaith understanding.
Oh, wonderful.
One on Jews and Christians, A Journey of Faith was our first one. And then we did one on Islam and what it shares in common with Judaism and Christianity. And for the Abrahamic religions, A Divine Encounter in America. And that's what Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Jainism have in common with Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and what they don't. So this is our 4th documentary in the series, and this is a comprehensive overview of religion, spirituality, and health, and we shot all over the country, nationwide. So it's a mosaic on the subject. And I'm hoping everybody out there can come tomorrow at 12 noon to watch it. We're going to get an audience.
Yes, you're going to get those people in it tonight.
That's right.
And so we've got, is it Nell or Nell?
No, I'm Angela.
Oh, it's Angela. I'm sorry. I have completely the wrong name on my list. Angela, could you introduce yourself?
I'm Angela Lamb, filmmaker of Uninflame Me, Reversing the American Diet and Lifestyle.
Excellent. And could you just tell us where to find your film online, or is it going to be distributed?
We are working on this. This is the film's premiere. You can find us on uninflamememovie.com as well as Facebook Uninflamememovie, and also on Instagram Healthy Life Nation.
Thank you. Wonderful. And then, do I have you correctly, John Gomez?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm at 2 out of 3. Awesome. And could you tell us your film?
Yeah, my film is called When I Stutter. Bernice wants me to talk up. Can you hear me, Bernice?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I'm doing a good job. And it's about the emotional and psychological impact of stuttering. It's my first film. This is my 7th film festival. I'm very proud to be having the West Coast premiere here at the Awareness Film Festival. And yeah, you can find more information on www.whenistutter.com. Like I said, currently I'm going through the film festival cycle, so I haven't had distribution yet, although I am meeting with potential distributors. So.
Wonderful. And has your film aired already? Have you played it yet, or is it going to play tomorrow?
It's going to be playing Sunday, tomorrow. Last time I checked, it was sold out, but they may have opened up more tickets. So tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So check and see if there are tickets, and please come if you can.
Come on out. All right. Wonderful. So I want to just go down the road here, and if you could each just give me a little snapshot of what inspired you to make this film. Let's start with Angela in the end.
I was diagnosed with a chronic illness, and after a very scary hospitalization, my life was going to look like bi-weekly blood draws, constant seeing doctors, and injecting myself with needles 3 times a day to thin my blood. And I did not want to accept that as my new life forever. So I started searching for answers, and initially the premise of my film was going to just be about my journey and hope to wellness, but it also became so much more because I learned that standard medicine is not the best medicine that you can have, and that you have to search for root cause medicine doctors that will actually look to see what is causing the symptoms and what's causing your body to, in my case, be chronically inflamed. So luckily, after much searching and finding qualified physicians that were willing to look at me holistically and treat me fully, I am well today. And I created the film because I wanted to let other people know that it is possible. A lot of diseases, lifestyle-related diseases, can be reversed if you find the right physician and are willing to make lifestyle changes for your health.
Wonderful, thank you. So a very personal journey for you.
Yes.
Gerald?
Call me Jerry.
Jerry!
Call me Gerald and they don't know the answer.
Oh,
And that's my
I don't want to
first
put you on the spot. What inspired you to make the health as a sacred matter?
Well, as I said, it's been a long journey for us, about 15 years. We had read about a woman named Dr. Christina Polkowski, and she heads up the George Washington Institute of Spirituality and Health, GWISH. And we were just very intrigued by that whole subject of how does religion, spirituality, what is the impact in regards to health, how is it practiced today, and it's kind of a pioneering piece in that even though going back to the Bible, Jesus had a healing ministry, and that went on in terms of all of the religions. But then, somewhere after Martin Luther King, after the Reformation, all of a sudden there became a separation between health and religion. They figured religion is for the mind and the soul, but didn't really have any place in the field of medicine. And I think in many cases that's even true today. But slowly there has been kind of an awakening in terms of not proselytizing, but rather understanding compassion, forgiveness, meditation, relaxation, that there is a place for the spiritual side in regards to health. And even now the chaplain, at one point, the chaplain was just, someone's like, he would come in, but now he's part of the patient's center team, along with the clinician and the nurse and the social worker. He's part of that team now. So we feel that the documentary is a pioneering effort in the field, and that was a reason to make the documentary. And then when the John Templeton Foundation finally agreed to underwrite the program, the making of the film, I just learned a hell of a lot. It was a hell of a journey. And as I said before, the fact that life imitating art, because my long-standing partner, died during the production. So it really was a very, emotional moment for me to make the documentary. And the people who were in the documentary inspired me even more, and I'll share some of those stories with you later.
I want to call them. Sorry. I just lost my place completely. So tell us what inspired you to make When I Stutter.
I am a speech pathologist. I'm not a person who stutters. But when I was in grad school, I was sitting in a class, and the class is run by Gail Wilson-Liu, and she is a person who stutters. She's also featured prominently in my film, and she played a lot of documentaries for us about the emotional impact of stuttering. And as is the fate of every film, you know, they get dated. Just the way they're stylized, the music, and I really liked the emotional content in them. I liked what the participants were saying. I just thought that they could be framed in an emotional context that would make them resonate a little bit better. So at the time, I hadn't gone to film school. Jerry, we were talking earlier, he's gone to UCLA Film School. I could be so lucky. Jerry should be so lucky.
Just got out last year.
A new graduate. Congratulations.
I went to school actually with Francis Ford Coppola.
Wow.
We both ended up making films about God.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, hey, that's a good story. So my training up until that point had only been to make wedding videos. Mm-hmm. But I sat there and I thought, I think I can make something a little bit more current. So I didn't realize how steep the learning curve would be at the time. And little by little, I had some talented friends and a lot of encouraging family. And I was able to get it done.
Wonderful. And have you found there is a change in how medicine and educators treat this, you know, people that have the condition of stuttering? Or have they figured out why it happens? Have they figured out, I know there's a lot of work in rehabilitating it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We don't know why people stutter. It could be a perfect storm of a convergence of neurological factors, structural abnormalities, levels of sensitivity that, you know, are some people have more propensity towards than others. For right now, most speech pathologists are they took a survey some time back, and they found that 80 to 90% of speech pathologists are actually afraid of it. They don't feel like they know what they're doing, and that's because it is so arcane. You know, 1% of the entire population stutters. And if you're working in a school, maybe you have one kid per year, and they may be on the severe end, they may be on the mild end, and you're not exactly sure. So nobody feels 100% confident. So one of the reasons I made this is not only to build awareness for the public at large, but also among speech pathologists that we really, really need to take care of the emotional component in a human being, which I think all medical providers should do, but when it comes to stuttering, especially important.
And so the emotional component is very influential in someone who has the condition for stuttering?
Well, yeah, because it's not just the stuttering. In fact, one can be disfluent. I can talk to you and I can use less, you know, while I'm looking for my thoughts and do that type of thing.
Always says like.
Right.
Like.
And that can happen, and yet I can still get my idea across. But where it becomes insidious is when you have the fear of stuttering, and you then become afraid to talk, and you engage in avoidance behaviors. And you know, you saw that in the king's speech. He did not want to become king because he didn't want to talk. And if you can kind of extrapolate that to people's everyday travails, essentially, you know, if you're a child and you feel like it's wrong to stutter, then essentially you're not going to talk as much. And that gets worse as you grow older if you don't have the right kind of therapy. And the right kind of therapy is learning how to talk openly, saying what you want, when you want, whether or not you stutter.
And as a child, I imagine you could become very isolated as the system sort of boots you along. You know, we're very big on literacy, and as a writer, I'm all about literacy.
Yeah.
But spoken communication is our oldest form of communication. So it seems very important to encourage students who have stuttering to take a chance to step out there, and even if they trip up a little, get some confidence, and to educate the general students that
Absolutely.
This isn't something to make fun of, and it's just a normal thing like anybody else. Everybody gets the hiccups.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the analogy that comes to my mind. It
like
seems sort of like a hiccup, but it's just a vocal hiccup.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. And yeah, it's just if you can teach somebody at an early enough age that they're going to be okay no matter what. The funny thing that happens is the incidence of stuttering actually goes down in that person. You stutter less when you know that you're going to be okay to do it. Like if I know that I'm okay to mess up in front of a group of people, then all of a sudden I'm probably less likely to mess up because I don't have that fear of doing it. So you get them young enough, but you know, you can even have success with adult clients. It's just a little bit of deprogramming.
I've even worked with professional actors who were stutterers and have had that in their upbringing and were very afraid to speak, and then they discovered theater and they could step into another identity as this character, and all of a sudden they're on stage giving long speeches and they never have a stutter, but then they come off stage and as themselves they get that self-consciousness.
That's right.
So, wow, well thank you. This film sounds like it's going to be opening some awareness, which we love here at Awareness Festival.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate, and again, it's really nice to be here, so thank you for having me.
Thank you, an inaugural film, so thank you. We're honored it's premiering here.
Oh, absolutely.
That's fantastic. So Angela, I wanted to follow up with you. This is a personal story for you, and I come from a family that has chronic diseases like heart disease and diabetes, and I grew up watching relatives with the needle stick and taking the blood every day and tracking it, and I learned early that there were two mindsets. The one mindset is, oh, you've got a problem, let's medicate the symptoms and sort of don't do anything else. And then there's what you call the holistic approach, where a root cause approach.
Yes,
right. So tell us about the root cause approach, because we sort of know about Western medicine that just says take this drug or take this pill every day.
Well, and that was the thing when I first was diagnosed with a blood clotting autoimmune disorder called anti-phospholipid syndrome, and if you look at it, it's a systemic chronic condition, and people die from it because their body starts attacking itself with blood clots. How I ended up in the hospital was from a blood clot, and that's when I learned about the condition. And if you look online, or if you talk to, if you join a support group, they're just giving you medication management advice. They're not giving you what you need to change, or if there's any root cause that you can find to reverse it. I learned about an anti-inflammatory diet. I learned that I was chronically inflamed, and so I started reading about how to reduce that chronic inflammation. So that was one critical step, is changing my diet and my lifestyle. And then I luckily came across a integrative cardiologist that looked at my genetics and my enzymes and my nutrient deficiencies, which I did have quite a few. And I learned that I had a genetic mutation that actually up to 70% of the U.S. population has. It's called the MTHFR mutation. It leads to a lot of different chronic illnesses, but it's people, there's bio-individuality, so people are treated different ways, but the way that I'm treated is just taking active B vitamins, and that fulfills where I'm no longer deficient in that enzyme, which is huge. So through lifestyle changes and just having physicians look at all those things, so you have the information to go on, I was able to reverse my chronic illness, and they say that it never goes away. I know that if I went back to all of my habits before, I would probably get it again, but there's no signs of it in my system.
And you certainly are glowing with health. I mean, you're...
well, thank you. Thank you.
So, would you say you sort of played detective a little bit? You became sort of an advocate for
did.
your own cause?
And the reason why I wanted to create the film is, I'm not wealthy, but I am somewhat of a woman of means, and I have a certain understanding and education level, and it was really challenging for me to get this information and find that I could reverse my illness. And I know one of the people in the film was a diabetic that I went to grade school with, and he's not a man of means, and he's been hospitalized many times because he's not getting the information that he needs. And I feel that this message needs to be communicated. Unfortunately, in the U.S., chronic illness is a huge business. So they're not incentivized to share this message. So I felt like, when you're faced with a life-threatening illness, once I got to the other side, I felt like I wanted to make a difference, and I wanted to help others that may be facing this and not getting quite the path that I was on to become better.
And also, I've got to commend you for your courage and just like your grit and your steel, because a lot of people will get a diagnosis and then just sort of become hopeless. And something you said jumped out to my ears, that you refuse to accept that as your fate. So I found that was a very sort of inspiring thing. Maybe you could speak a little bit about that, how people in general maybe are programmed to just accept their fate of this American diet.
Right, I do think that, and it's really stood out since I've been trying to help people, because I've reached out to a lot of organizations and a lot of support groups, and unfortunately a lot of the two anti-phospholipid support groups that I know of in the US are actually not support groups at all. They're funded by pharmaceutical companies to do blood thinner research trials, so they're not promoting.
So they're kind of fishing for patients.
They're fishing for clients. To enroll in
bad
a research
medicine.
trial, so they did not like me at all.
Yeah, because you're like, here, be cured and not need your medicine.
Right. So that was a rude awakening, because I pushed them to help, to make a difference, and maybe use this film as an outlet to get more research for autoimmune disorders and anti-inflammatory diet and this very common genetic mutation. And I was,
So you ran
not
into,
approached very nicely.
like a contrary agenda there.
Yes.
They had another agenda, and they were sort of disguised as a support group there.
Exactly, which was very disheartening.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, because
That's a good
that's
lesson to learn as a filmmaker.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
true. Well, and Jerry, I wanted to bring this
Sorry.
to your point, because this sort of comes together. We've got philosophies in medicine about, Western medicine says your body does this, and Eastern medicine says your body does that. And so I wanted to know what you sort of discovered in your 15-year process of, where does it sort of all come down to us through these sacred writings and these different religious traditions? Is the body a sacred temple? Is the body the property of God? Is the body the property of the church? And, are we just tenants here leasing these meat suits?
Who you talk to, all and none of the above.
Right. So I want to know what your takeaway from all of that was. What do you think? Was there a through line, or is there some common ground in all of that?
I believe, in terms of what I discovered in terms of the filmmaking process and the people that I met and the situations that we were in, I believe there's credibility and validity to the subject. We were documenting the subject. There's also a side that, we have a very articulate gentleman, Dr. Sloan from Columbia University, who doesn't think any of this is a good idea, that doctors should not get involved in this.
In any
Well,
aspect
because
of
of the
spirituality.
proselytizing. The
Okay.
doctor and the patient isn't the...
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, because right now in this country,
Right.
the Catholic Church runs a lot of rural hospitals, and the Catholic Church has some pretty strange, to be nice, rules about women's bodies and what they can be, how they can be treated, services that can be given to women, and you have populations now that only have one hospital within hundreds of miles, and it's a Catholic hospital, and women are basically being subjected to, treated like they're subject to the Catholic Church when they go to a doctor, and they're not being given what I consider their civil rights, in far as even being informed that they have medical options for things the church says, oh no, we're not allowed to touch that.
Well, I guess there is that agenda of those folks. There's also, who do you think founded the Mayo Clinic? Catholic.
The Mormons, the Catholic Church.
No.
Oh.
Catholic Church. The Mayo Clinic, I'm sure, encountered for that. And many famous hospitals were founded
right.
by Catholics, and yet Georgetown, for example, it just goes on and on in terms of those hospitals. And I think that, in that particular case, I can't vouch for it 100%, but I think there is a separation between church and state. So I really think it depends on the hospital, it depends on the situation, these maybe smaller situations. I'm a documentarian. I mean, I'm sure what you're saying is so in instances, but there is a separation in many of the famous hospitals in regards to that research.
So that would be an instance where you would want your doctor to keep their personal religious views out of the treatment they recommend for you.
Yes, I mean there's that fine line.
Right.
There's the fine line. So there's a lot of debate in terms of that subject.
And did you find an instance where a doctor's spirituality or religion might be helpful to their practice?
Yes, Dr. Christine Holokowski is a good example of that in terms of the whole idea of compassion, of forgiveness, of sensitivity. You know, when my dear partner died and he got his diagnosis, the doctor that was eyes on the prize, the computer, never looked up from him. And then he just said, oh, and by the way, you only have 6 months more to live.
Like it's a line item.
Yeah, a line item.
Oh, wow.
So you might as well get your affairs on. So we went over to another doctor who showed a lot more sensitivity to all of that. So that whole idea, you see, that whole sensitivity, I think is very important. But I think when you're going to a hospital, you're finding even at the line, you're introducing, when you come in as a patient, there's a lot more sensitivity to the patients. And I believe in many cases it has to do with the fact that there is a certain credibility and validity in terms of understanding where a person's coming in terms of their spiritual sensitivity. We, for example, did a scene at the University of Chicago, and the students there make the rounds. And when they make the rounds, and this particular doctor wants to make them aware of who these patients are. What is their background? Where are they coming from in terms of their religion or not religion? And yet one of the students walked and said, "Hey, I'm an atheist. What should I do when I run into a patient?" Refer to a chaplain. So it's always a delicate balance between the two. But it was in my case, it was just I'm a documentarian. It was a hell of a good learning experience for me. I don't know if you're familiar with, Sidney Pollack. He made a documentary for Frank Gehry on architecture. And Sidney Pollack, it's great filmmaking. He made Tootsie, but architecture? What do you know about architecture? And the interviewer said to Sidney Pollack, "Why did Frank Gehry choose you to make a film on architecture and what he does?" He said, "Because I don't know a damn thing about it."
An open mind.
An open mind. So when I've been making these interfaith documentaries, the Sikhs come to me, the Hindus come to me. There are a lot of good Hindu filmmakers. But I have been able to communicate that whole interfaith scenario. So that, if somebody says Ayurveda, what do you mean Ayurveda? What is Ayurveda? That's 5,000 years old. I don't know from that.
You can ask the question the rest of us might be having.
You see, and they take it all that for granted. The religions take all of that for granted. So that whole idea of interfaith understanding is really how we built our reputation in terms of the kind of films that we make. And I don't know if I got on the subject here.
Well, it's interesting anyway. And I think, did Aunt Bernice have a question?
Well, no, the only question I have, since I'm a former financier, I'm intrigued that they were objective enough to be able to give you the grant, irrespective of the fact that you're bringing in religion and different differences of, it's a very sensitive subject.
I think I got the grant because I lined up the usual suspects. Who did I get to give me letters of endorsement? Because I
Okay.
knew they would be the best for the film. All the people who had received millions of dollars from the John Templeton Foundation. They're the ones who wrote me letters of support.
So you
On
had-
my own, I went to Gut and Penny, and they normally don't give money to film.
Right.
Yeah. So you.
So I just lined up the usual suspects.
That's great. Yeah.
And they
well,
all
you
gave
could-
me letters of support, but I
Yeah.
didn't just choose them because they had gotten Templeton
Right.
brands, but because they're
But you
the
have very
ones
reliable
who
data
are there
then.
to tell me the story.
Right.
And so that's how the Templeton brand happened. Otherwise, you know. So it was more of a pragmatic.
Right.
They would have never given that grant to Jerry Krill on his own. But I'm a producer.
Right. And you have reliable data that supported the information that you were conveying.
It was a hell of a learning experience. You have to do your homework.
Right.
I don't know for anything about the subject, but you've got to do your homework. Read when you interview somebody, you gotta know what you're talking about in terms of the subject before you start judging. So that's basically where I'm coming from.
That's great. I think that's the best mindset for a documentary filmmaker anyway, to have that open mind on their subject. And be willing to learn about it. Willing to explore it. So just briefly, I think we're almost closing out at the end of our time here. Could you tell us each what your goal and your dreams, your hope for what the film is going to do? Let's start with you.
Well, first off, my hope is that it will reach people that are currently dealing with health crisis and educate them about how to reduce chronic inflammation naturally, because that does lead to so many illnesses. It's the number one killer. And teach them about root cause medicine. So that's my first hope. My second hope is that, and this might be a lofty hope, but that eventually root cause medicine can become standard medicine.
Right.
And when people
Right.
are faced with challenges such as this, that it's not just writing a script to put the symptoms where they're hidden, and that you're actually having someone peel back the layers and getting to the root cause and addressing why the problem.
And maybe even getting out ahead of some problems.
Right,
Just-
exactly,
right,
exactly.
so it's
Prevention
in your family.
as well.
Anti-inflammatory. So you say anti-inflammatory diet. Could you just, I know you detail it in the film, but just briefly, could you tell us, are you talking about veganism, vegetarianism?
I'm not vegan or vegetarian, although I do eat some animal products. It's very limited. Anti-inflammatory is, first of all, just eating very pure. And when I say pure, whole, real foods. And then you start there. You get it. Like the first thing that I did was to give up all the processed food, the white flour, the soda. So that went away initially. And then once you do that, you take away gluten is something that people are often very allergic to. So I don't have celiac disease, but I learned if I reduce gluten greatly, it's much better for me. So I did that. I took it away and then I brought it back and oh wow, there's an issue there. I did the same with dairy. So I'm not completely lactose intolerant, but I limit it tremendously. Some people have issues with nightshade vegetables. So I do not have, I took those away, brought them back, no issue. So that's not an issue for me. Everybody has bio-individuality that you have to consider. Sugar is also a big trigger, so limiting your sugar, because that leads to so many issues. And if I do eat sugar, it's from fruit, natural sugar. So really just being pure and then seeing what affects you, taking away things for 30 to 60 days, bringing them back. You know, are you feeling bloated? Does your stomach hurt? And then adjusting your diet accordingly.
Right, and so many Americans, they just assume that acid indigestion, stomach problems,
And then just pop
that
the
it's just
pills.
normal, that this is the normal reaction to our food, and it always seems strange to me. It's like, well, it doesn't seem like food should hurt you. So, I mean, that seems pretty basic. But is there also an exercise component to your
There
plan?
is definitely an exercise
Okay, so So it's more than just the diet.
Absolutely, and it's also the deficiencies. Like now I take a few nutraceuticals, not a lot, but I a processed food diet or common standard American diet is pro-inflammatory. Processed food, it comes with a lot of omega-6s, which is pro-inflammatory. And so I counterbalance that with fish oil and eating a lot of fish. I don't eat processed food at all anymore, but given that I have a genetic tendency towards inflammation, I also add the omega-3 supplement.
So you cook a lot for yourself?
I do, and I hated cooking before, but now that I'm concerned and focused on what's in the food,
you can control what goes into it.
But all of a sudden, I like to cook. So.
Oh, wonderful. What's for dinner?
Well,
What's she cooking?
my kitchen's in St. Louis, so.
How do you cook when you're on the road like this? Do you sort of break your diet and sort of fall off the wagon when you're on the road?
No,
or do you have
luckily
strategies?
Los Angeles has a lot of great resources. I wish I could say the same for my hometown. We're working on it. We're getting better. There are places, but it's not everywhere. If I was going to like taking my kids to Six Flags or someplace like an amusement park, I would pack. I would pack my food and my drink, and I would just tell them even though I'm well now, I don't want to ever get to where I was, and so I'll tell them I have an autoimmune disorder. I have to eat a certain way.
Right.
So they'll let me bring it in.
Oh, because the park has the rules about no outside food. Yeah. So how have your children adjusted to this? Have they changed their diet?
They have changed their diet considerably, and they're aware of their choices. And kids, I have a lot of influences. It's still like if you go to the bank and they want to give your kids a sucker, and they do well on a spelling test, and the teacher's handing them candy.
Right. Halloween's coming up. This is the big candy holiday.
So it is challenging, but I think because I don't think you should shame them into eating a certain way, because I would, me personally, they would just I would lash out if someone approached me in that way. But just being a role model and cooking healthy things at home.
And whole foods are tasty because our taste buds actually want them.
Right. Well, it's funny because once I eliminated that, there was a few things that once in a while I would try, and it just seemed so artificial and nasty to me, and I used to love it.
Your palate changed.
Your palate changes.
Amazing. So I hope this film just spreads like wildfire and gets everybody.
I hope so.
Have you, honestly, just off the top of my head, I think you should contact the Obama Foundation. Michelle Obama, the former First Lady, was all about organic and getting organic lunches into schools. This might be something, sounds like you should, I wish I had a phone number for you, but this is an idea that popped in my head. So Jerry, what do you have? You've already got your film ready to go nationwide on PBS?
That's right, on public television stations nationwide.
What do you hope maybe will be the result of this?
Well, as I say, it's a grand mosaic in terms of the subject. Everything from how to form compassionate physicians, body and soul, the search for connection. Our doctors, healers, technicians are both chaplaincy, a ministry of presence. We do a lot on culturally sensitive care. How each of the Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, taking care of one's own, and palliative care. It's not about caring; it's about curing and forgiving and caregiving spiritual workers. I'd like just to end up on that note. There was a mother and daughter, Michelle, Marilyn and Michelle Martin. And Michelle was at the University of Chicago and was going to graduate, in fact, the week after, of Phi Beta Kappa. And she went to have dinner at the restaurant. And they used to have, at the University of Chicago, they outsourced the dinners they were eating at a senior citizen place, where a woman backed in and sent poor Michelle into the wall and brain damaged her. And next week she was graduating Phi Beta Kappa, which she did get because she had already passed the test. And so it's really about their relationship, their spiritual journey. I've seen that scene maybe 100 times in editing. Cried every time I've seen it. But initially, they talked about either warehousing her or perhaps not prolonging her life. But in many cases, that's a moral decision. In many cases, it's not a good idea to prolong her. In her case, she did make a recovery. And so we dealt with her art therapist, her music therapist, and she writes her own music now. And what's one of her songs? Just because I'm in a wheelchair, don't pass me by. So I'm just saying that the film touched my heart, and I'm just hoping that it will touch audiences' hearts, and that they can evaluate for themselves. And you know, yes, there are things in religion and health, as my people would say, are not kosher. Not a good idea. I came up with a few of those examples. So this is not a proselytizing documentary. It's really about a documentary about understanding.
We need more of that.
So that's what all of this is about, and that's what we're trying to, that's what we hope for today with our audience.
Get our final word. What are your hopes for the film?
The hopes for the film is for it to be seen far and wide. I think some people may go into the film and wonder what's in it for them. Maybe they're going in and they're a little bit curious about what stuttering is about, or you know, they may already come in thinking they know a lot about it. And I think a lot of people can walk out of the film learning a little something. If they knew something about the medical side of it, they'll come out and they'll know a little bit more about the psychological aspect of it, or vice versa. And I had so many wonderful people associated with it, and they gave so much advice. But there's one really kind of universal lesson embedded within the film, and that's for us to learn how to actively listen to one another. You know, when you're talking to me, I'm really absorbing what you're saying. I'm not just thinking about what I'm going to say. And that's something that can make, you know, our experiences as human beings better, and certainly for a person who stutters. I think sometimes if you're a person that doesn't stutter, it can be a little bit awkward. What do? Do I finish their sentence for them? Is that helpful? No, in fact, you do what you normally do, which is just listen. So the hope is that it gets seen by as many people as possible. I think that's what we all want, to spread awareness, and in doing so, I think you'd make the life for a person who stutters much easier.
Thank you. Well, 3 beautiful films and 3 beautiful filmmakers. Thank you.
Thanks.